Today we continue on with our NHL season preview series, and we're shifting gears to the Western Conference and the Pacific Division. Today we take a look at the Stanley Cup finalists, the Edmonton Oilers. Are they going to be just as strong this year? Can they get back? Can they be a cup contender? We'll discuss all the changes and thoughts on the team coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we continue on with our season preview series looking at the Edmonton Oilers. Now, if you're new to this series, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to recap last year, take a look at some team stats, look at how their season finished, top scores, things like that, look at their cap space, and then we're going to take a look at how the team has changed, go through their additions, their subtractions, look at their roster, what's projected to be their starting players this year, and then take a look at the questions facing this team going into the upcoming 24-25 campaign to look at where we think they're going to finish and how well they're going to do. Let's start first with a 24-25 recap of the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, they had a really rocky start to the year, ended up firing their coach Jay Woodcroft, brought in Chris Knobloch, and then they went on a run. Even though they got off to a deep hole early, they dug themselves out of it, finishing second in the division with 104 points, a record of 49, 27, and 6. They scored 294 goals, which was the fourth most in the league. They allowed 237 goals, which was the only 10th best. So again, goals for, goals against, both really good. The power play was amazing, 26.3%, fourth best in the NHL. The PK was only average in the regular season at 79.5, but in the playoffs it became amazing and elite, and they went on a major streak of not giving up any power play goals, which was a huge reason why they were able to make it all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. So the last 5 years they've been a playoff team. This past year, unfortunately, they lost in the Stanley Cup Final in Game 7. Really within a goal of tying it, 2 goals of winning it. That close. You really can't get much closer without getting the job done. This team is largely the same with a few tweaks. I mean, there's lots of changes, but the players going in and out, I think that overall, if anything, this team got better, in my opinion, which we'll take a look at here in just a moment. The top scorers from last year, Connor McDavid with another awesome season, 132 points. Leon Draisaitl with 106 points. Evan Bouchard with 82. Zach Hyman with 54 goals and 77 points, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had 67. Of course, lots of these guys had great playoff performances here as well. Now, going into the season, their cap space is $945,000. Not a lot to work with, but there's a room there to squeak in, say, one league minimum deal. Looking at their additions and their subtractions, the list of subtractions is actually quite long for a team that came within one game and like I said, a goal or two winning the Stanley Cup. A lot of changes were made. Let's start with the players that are no longer with this club. They bought out Jack Campbell after a horrible start to that $5 million contract that he had. He's gone. Campbell was bought out after spending majority of the year in the minors. Of course, Warren Foegele departed as a free agent. They lost Phil Broberg and Dylan Holloway to offer sheets to the St. Louis Blues. Vinny Desharnais signed with Vancouver. They traded Cody Ceci to the Sharks. They traded Ryan McLeod to the Sabres. Sam Gagner and Sam Carrick, Adam Ernie were not brought back, and Xavier Bourgault was swapped in a prospect move with the Ottawa Senators. The additions, the new players coming in. You got Jeff Skinner, who was bought out in Buffalo, comes in on a short-term, cheaper deal. So Skinner, hoping to kind of revitalize his career, has a history of scoring, 30, 40 goals. Terrific skater. Should be able to contribute with this Oilers team. They bring in Victor Arvidsson of LA. Of course, Arvidsson knows this team well after 3 consecutive playoff battles with them. Arvidsson, a veteran of the league, good friends with Matthias Ekholm from their time in Nashville. Still has a lot to give and should be able to be a good secondary scorer. Vasily Podkolzin was picked up for a draft pick from the Vancouver Canucks. So again, a young player that they feel could give them similar value to Dylan Holloway. At least that's kind of what they're hoping. They signed Josh Brown as a free agent on the back end. They traded with the Sharks, of course, with Ceci. They get Ty Emberson coming back, who's a younger right-shot defenseman who's defensively relatively sound for his age. Did well on a really weak Sharks team. Has history with Knobloch as well through their time in Hartford. So another player the coach is very familiar with. And they have Travis Dermott as well on a PTO. He could end up getting signed. We'll have to wait and see. As far as rookies that are going to be possibly impactful, which is actually another addition to the team, is Matt Savoy, who former first-round pick of the Buffalo Sabres, who came over in the Ryan McLeod trade. Outside of Savoy, I'm not sure we're really going to see a whole lot of brand new rookies to this lineup. There are some that maybe have an opportunity to get some games in, but this team is going for the Stanley Cup here. They have a very deep, experienced lineup. I'm not sure outside of Savoy that anybody's really going to get a whole lot of opportunities. As far as players that we might see with contract extensions this year, guys who are pending UFAs or RFAs in their last year of their deal. Well, of course, the big one that we thought we might get is Leon Draisaitl, but that's taken care of now. He signed a mammoth 8-year extension, of course, with the Oilers, so he's looked after. Skinner, Perry, Josh Brown, and Derek Ryan are all in their final year of their contracts. With the Oilers, most of these guys are on 1-year deals, so they can't even sign until January. I don't think those are really going to be anything we see anytime soon. Those guys are probably going to be left till much later in the year or in the offseason. The main one that we could see an extension with, if they get the terms sorted out and the agreement in place, is for Evan Bouchard, who's your only real RFA as well. Bouchard's a huge part of this team, third on scoring last year. It's believed he's looking for an 8-year deal and somewhere around the $11 million mark. So, after getting Draisaitl taken care of, they'll have to do McDavid next summer, and Bouchard is another big piece of the puzzle here. So hopefully they can get that figured out. But that probably, when it comes to contract extensions, would be the only real one of significance that we'll possibly see throughout this season. Now, with Bouchard, I know they've started negotiations. I don't know how quickly it's going to come together. If there's any chance they can get it done before the season starts while they're in training camp. After that, I don't know if they're going to kind of put things on hold and wait till the end of the year or what have you. But either way, Bouchard's going to get paid quite handsomely. Now, looking at their roster going into the campaign, who are your players you're going to see on the ice in your top 6D and your 4 forward lines? Well, between the pipes, first up, you got Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard. They were both obviously still with the team. Skinner settled in nicely to the starting role. Pickard came in the playoffs and proved he can be a reliable backup. They signed Pickard to a multi-year $1 million deal. So they have their tandem in place. That should be consistent here. On the blue line, you've got Bouchard and Ekholm, Nurse and Emberson. I do think they're going to give Emberson an opportunity to play in that probably that 4D spot with Nurse on the second pair. You got Kulak, Brown, Stetcher right now on your back end as your 5, 6, 7. Dermott maybe being in the mix there possibly as well. I do think at some point, depending on how Emberson does, that number, that top 4D right spot is somebody that might be, if the Oilers make any trades throughout the year, that might be an area they look to upgrade. But I think they want to probably get a look and feel for how things go first. If Emberson can be moved down to your third pair, that might make the team even better. But that might be a later in the season trade deadline type of move. Of course, your top lines, you're going to have McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins, Hyman, Arvidsson, and Skinner likely going to make up your top 6. Evander Kane will not be with this team for either majority or all of the season. We learned that Evander Kane is definitely going to be having surgery, will be placed on long-term injury reserve. Evander Kane's actually got 4 different issues going on. He's got 2 different hernias, and he has 2 different ab muscle tears as well. So there is basically 4 issues in there. It's hard to say right now the exact timelines he's dealing with, but there are some people that believe there's a possibility that Evander Kane might miss the entire season. Could he come back for playoffs or something? That is a possibility. We don't know. So your top 6 is pretty well set. McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins, Hyman, Arvidsson, Skinner, you're most likely. And then you got your third line that was so good in the playoffs of Henrique, Janmark, and Brown. You got Derek Ryan and Podkolzin likely will grab a spot that Holloway had. Now, of course, with a player, though, like Kane being out, that might create an opportunity here for a guy like a Savoy possibly to get in there. We'll see. They do have some other options as well. After your third line, you're going to have Corey Perry, Derek Ryan, probably Podkolzin. That, to me, could very well be your fourth line. I do think there's a chance Matt Savoy will see a decent amount of NHL games, depending on injuries. I think Savoy's a player. I probably wouldn't put him on your fourth line, but I think he could play anywhere in your top 9. So we'll see what the future has in store there. As far as the top questions go, ultimately is, can they take everything they did so well to end of last year and into the playoffs and just kind of keep it going? Because they really created a really strong team here, but it took time, as we know. They had a bad start last year, and they got to the point where they were so good with team defense. The penalty kill, the power play was just so effective. All in all, they were so good in the playoffs, so close to winning the Stanley Cup. At the end of the day, they need to continue on with the goaltending, hopefully holding up the way it was. This blue line, to me, is, arguably, it's hard to say if it's, I don't know if we can say the blue line is better. A big X factor here is Emberson. If Emberson can give you top 4 minutes on the right side and be defensively sound, and maybe this blue line's not too bad. But, is the blue line going to be good enough is a big question. And, of course, in the forward group, the big question a lot of last year was secondary scoring. I think they've addressed that with guys like Skinner coming in and Arvidsson. McLeod was a good player, but would often have long stretches without any offense. That third line of Henrik Janmark and Connor Brown was so good, and that's intact. So to me, you've got a good balance there. You've got a good amount of speed and skill up front. You've got some good defensive play, smart players, and good veterans in your bottom 6 as well. I honestly think this team should be able to contend for the Stanley Cup again. And in fact, I have to think there might even be the odds-on favorite. If you look at Florida, I don't know that Florida's as strong as they were last year. I honestly think the Oilers overall might be stronger, especially if they can add one more defenseman later into the season, which I do believe is their main target here. But they have some time to kind of, make some judgments on that and kind of decide who their target is going to be. But all in all, this is a really good hockey team that should be able to be definitely in the top 3 in their division. I would say definitely even top 2, most likely first. I'm going to say probably first place. As far as my projections for them, they're definitely going to be a team that I'm going to say going to be right in the mix for the Stanley Cup. Most likely winning their division. You never know. I guess there's some other really good teams in the Pacific. Probably first or second would be the worst case scenario for that. And then with the possibility of, again, going deep in the playoffs. But I think they have as good a chance as ever to actually win the Cup this year. This is a heck of a team, and we'll see. I like a lot of the changes they've made, and I think, generally speaking, they've gotten better. So let me know what you think of the Edmonton Oilers for the upcoming 24-25 campaign. Down in the comments, we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.